But before I do that, let me show you something that you know that you may not realize that you know. And I've got some coins here, and I've got a quarter and a nickel and a penny. So how much is that? Well, I know that a quarter is 25 cents. And I know that a nickel is 5 cents and a penny is 1 cent. So altogether, it's 36 cents. This is something that I'm sorry. I was testing you. I wanted to see if you're paying attention. 31 cents. I usually have a dime. 31 cents. So, but this is one of those things that you know to do, but you don't really think about. If I told you I was going to run 100 yards and 30 feet, how far did I run? Well, most of you know intuitively that you have to change these to be the same. So I could say, well, 100 yards is the same as 300 feet. And got this, so I ran 330 feet. I could also change feet to yards. This would be 10 yards. So it'd be 100 yards plus 10 yards. So I ran 110 yards. I could change them all to inches, to meters, to centimeters, whatever. But one of the things that you know is to add things, they have to be the same things. They just have to be. Apples and oranges, I got 2 apples and 3 oranges. What have I got? 2 apples and 3 oranges, unless I call them fruit. And so what I'm looking for is something that I can change each of these two. I can change both of them, one of them, the other, whatever, but I know that they have to be the same size things. Well, when I add and subtract fractions, the pieces have to be the same size. You've always done that. And so, for example, if I was going to add 2 fractions, 1/2 plus 1/3. I know that the sizes are different because this is a 2, this is a 3. If I draw a picture, here's 1/2. Here's 1/3. So what I need to do is, since the pieces aren't the same size, I need to make them the same size. So how do I do that? Well, one way I can do this is, I know that 2 times 3 is 6. So 2 goes into 6. 3 goes into 6. Oh, you know what? I can cut these pizzas up into 6 slices. So if I cut this one up into 3, this one up into 3, these into 2, now you see that all the slices are the same size. Now I can count them. So 1/2 is the same as 3/6. 1/3 is the same as 2/6. So now when I add them together, and this is kind of the tricky part, but think about it, I have 3 of those plus 2 of those. So altogether I have 5 of those. I don't add the denominators. The denominator just tells me how big the pieces are. That, my friends, is how you add and subtract fractions. You have to have a common denominator. That's what that's called. When I make that number the same, it's called a common denominator. Now, let me make an observation. All the way up until this point, have you heard me say anything about least common multiples, greatest common factors, lowest common denominators, any of that? No, you haven't. And part of it is that it's nice to know, but you really didn't need to know it. And so even here, a common denominator, I don't have to have the lowest common denominator. I just have to have a common denominator. For example, in my coin trick here, if I have a quarter and a nickel, I could change them each to pennies, 25 pennies and 5 pennies. But I could also say, well, this is 5 nickels. 5 nickels and one more nickel is 6 nickels. each of the nickels is 6 cents, I can change it to cents from there. But a common denominator would be nickels. So when I add and subtract, I have to have a common denominator. I have to have these pieces be the same slice. And when I could just as easily cut these up into 12 slices each and add it that way, and I'm still going to get the same answer. Might look different, the whole 4 quarters and $1 thing, but it's a convention I'm going to reduce. Okay, so finally, one last thing, and this is something that you'll see in a lot of the problems. So what happens when I have fractions that look like this? So 3 1/4, and I'm going to divide that by 1 and let's say 5/6. Okay. Now this is one of those things that we say it, but we don't write it down. This is 3 1/4. So think about it. It's 3 whole pizzas. Each of those pizzas would be 4 slices. And another 1/4. Okay? And I'm going to divide that by 1 and 5/6. And so I've got something like this, right? And I've got this. So I got 1 and 5/6. So in our heads, we say and when we mean add. By the way, when I say 2/3 of, I mean multiply, 2/3 times whatever. So, but here I've got, this is called a mixed number. It's part whole number, part fraction. And how do I divide these kinds of things? This looks like a mess. What I'm going to do is, and I encourage you to do this every time. If you have mixed numbers, change them to what we call an improper fraction. And the way you do that is, look, each of these 3 has got 4 slices in it. So it's 3 times 4. There's 12 slices there, plus I got 1 more. So I've got 13 slices that are that big. They're fourths. Now I'm going to divide that by, I'm going to take this one step at a time, 1 and 5/6. Well, this pizza has got 6 slices. That one's got 5, so that's 11, and they're this big. And we call these improper fractions because the top number is bigger than the bottom number. So now I'm dividing 13/4 divided by 11/6. How do I divide fractions? I multiply by the reciprocal. They call that the reciprocal when I flip. And so I'll multiply the top. So it's going to be, what, 78 and over 44. Most of the time, I'm going to leave it this way. I could go back to a mixed number. And the way I would do that is, this is 78 over 44. How many pieces does it take to make a whole pizza? Well, that pizza is going to have 44 slices. So I've got 78. So 44 out of 78 is going to leave me, what, 34? Is that right? So I'm going to have 1 whole pizza and 34 out of 44 slices. I can reduce 34, 44, half of that, half of this. Can I reduce that? No, I don't think so. There's my answer. So on a computer, it may, if you put this answer in, it'll tell you that you're wrong. It may be looking for this reduced answer, only because that's a convention. So one last thing, I said, you're going to notice that this symbol, the divide symbol, and the multiplication symbol, those things are going to be going away soon. You're not going to see those anymore. We're going to write these in a different way. The only things we're going to see are add and subtract. And so hopefully that helps, gives you a little quickie review of fractions, how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, what to do with mixed numbers. Hope that helps. Talk to you later. Bye.